Okay, so I think that we are live.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
and let's see if I can see it in the group.
I see it.
Oh, you see it.
Hmm.
And you can see if people have signed in or
Looks like 6 right now.
oh really?
Hmm.
Oh, I can't see.
Hi, JoJo.
Okay, now I see it.
Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining uh, our talk on mental health tips in light of the election. I am Dr. Stephanie, and this is Dr. Jessica Smedley, also known as No Stress Jess. And I just want to thank you for tuning in and just welcome you to our SOAR circle. This is our first Facebook Live. So as you can probably see, I'm just getting the hang of it. Uh, okay. If you can see names and you can greet people, that would be great because I can't see
Okay.
names.
Sure. I see JoJo Cookie, Ebony Walker. Good evening, ladies. Lisa.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, ladies. I'm so excited to have you. Um, So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Source Circle. I wanted to thank you all for participating and liking and commenting and inviting your friends. I have a vision just for creating a community, which is a safe space where we can share, we can encourage one another, we can support one another, and empower one another, and ultimately develop some organic networking relationships, some other types of sisterhood relationships, because I feel like when women are healed, that we're empowered, that we can heal our communities, we can heal the world. And I look forward to us, just being able to connect around empowerment and healing. So that is sort of the purpose of the group, and I'm excited with how it's gone so far. And this is our first Facebook Live activity, and hopefully at some point we'll have some in-person live activities as well. But I want to go ahead and introduce Dr. Smedley because as a licensed clinical psychologist, you can imagine she is quite busy, and we want to protect her self-care, and we're not going to stay on very long. We'll be on for about 30 to 45 minutes because I just really appreciate her time and the energy that she's putting out to be here for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jessica Smedley and let her introduce herself.
Thank you, Dr. Stephanie, for having me. It's a pleasure to be invited and to be the first Facebook Live of your illustrious SOAR Circle Facebook group. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate you making space for this conversation and for keeping mental health at the forefront, even of your practice and how you approach the work that you do and showing up for the community. So thank you for that. Um, Thank you. Yeah, I am a clinical psychologist, as she said, practice in Washington, D.C. area. Work predominantly with adults and children with learning and emotional disorders, and also do some consulting, do some writing. I have a blog, Dr. Jess on Black Stress. Um, and that, pretty much is it. Do a lot of volunteer and leadership work with the Association of Black Psychologists and APA. So definitely been a busy season. So happy to be here and to share with you all.
Mhm. Absolutely. So feel free to add a comment if you have a comment, if you have a question, if you want to add something to the discussion, feel free. And we're gonna just treat this like a conversation. It's not gonna be very formal. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about was just in regards to the election. I know for me personally, this has been a very stressful season and continues to be. Every day there's more news, and it seems like it's bad news more so than good news.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually 1 week before official election day. Although a lot of people have been voting early, I'm seeing everybody posting about voting early, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1 week of this continued pressure towards the finish line. And then once the election happens, we don't know when we'll get the results, and we don't know what the results will be. And I feel like our bodies are in a constant state of flight, fright, or frozen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're in that constant high adrenaline, high cortisol state because everything is, it's always like waiting for the next shoe to fall.
Right.
And it's definitely not healthy.
Right.
um, so I just wanted to get some thoughts from you on specifically tips for mental health in dealing with the situation that we're find ourselves in collectively right now.
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing, because of everything that you said right now, is to adjust our expectations. So I think that we started this off in March thinking, okay, 2 or 3 weeks. Then that became, okay, summertime, July. Then
Mm-hmm.
that became, okay, 2021. So
Right.
adjusting adjusting our expectations to start, because I think that we try to anxiety provokes us to identify a stop or a finish line because we have a need for some sense of control. And with this pandemic, with this election administration, we're not experiencing that. And so adjusting our expectations to be patient, to give ourselves grace, to just move through each day, move through each week without trying to become overwhelmed or over plan our lives, because we don't know, unfortunately, what the next 3 weeks, 3 months,
Yeah.
year will look like. um, and then in addition to that, I would say be mindful of how we're using and protecting our energy right now.
Mm-hmm.
So because of everything going on, we feel compelled to keep up with the media, the news, social media, which is normal in an election cycle, right? We want to know what's going on, and a lot of people historically have followed the commercials and all the propaganda. But right now, it's overwhelming because we're living in a time that is, unprecedented. And so we have to be mindful of how much we're actually watching the news. Do we need to see everything? Do we need to always watch every video? Do we need to scroll every social media outlet? When do we allow ourselves to pause and take breaks, and check in with ourselves and how we're actually doing? So I think just setting the tone of adjusting expectations and being mindful of our intake is a great place to start.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I have a hard time adjusting. Well, I have a hard time. I think I've gotten better at adjusting expectations, but I definitely have a hard time turning off the media.
Mm-hmm.
That that is where I struggle. And I know, a lot of times you can go down this little rabbit hole from one thing to the next, but that one is a little bit more difficult. I have things set up on my phone to tell me, how much social media I've used, and it sets an alarm when I've gone over my limit.
Mm-hmm.
And my son said the other day, he was like, "You just swiped that so fast. You didn't even look at the fact that you were over the limit. You just swiped past it and kept going." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did do that." So I think I have to set my intentions more and be more intentional now, because there is so much leading up to the election,
Yeah.
to to give myself limits on how much I take in from the media. So
Well, I think one thing that can help that is to trick our brains. So, one thing that I do when I realize that I'm overdoing it with social media is I move the folder where I keep those apps from my phone so that when I do go press practice that habit, it's not there anymore for me to tap. So
Oh.
you're switching your brain because we habituate to these things. And so if you reorganize, reshift the same way that you would, your kitchen or your room, you can do that same thing with technology. But we don't think about that. So turning off notifications, moving where we keep the apps, silence or do not disturb hours. These phones have all kinds of
Mhm.
settings that we use that we don't take advantage of.
That is a good point because when the new iPhone update came out, it has this Siri suggestions, right?
Uh huh.
And the first day I turned on Siri suggestions and I woke up, it was like, oh, you should probably look at Facebook and Twitter because that's what you typically do around this time. And I was like, why are you calling me out like that? I was very offended. But I think that I will move the apps into a hidden folder or something. So I have to like work a little bit to get to it.
Right.
So
But
that's
it
a
slows
great.
you down because the habit is programmed. It's autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to the place of where it normally is, you're like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to do that right now.
It just makes you stop for that second and
Uh-huh.
brings it kind of from your unconscious to your conscious mind and allows you to kind of make a better choice.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that. That's a great tip. Definitely taking that one away and using it. So, so we kind of talked about how to get through this season with setting our expectations and taking breaks from media.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about, you know, people who are really experiencing anxiety and depression? I've seen a lot more people sort of expressing um, the feeling of not wanting to get out of bed and
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to take a shower and not having that motivation to do the things that they used to love to do.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give people who are experiencing that right now?
Sure. So I would say two primary things. So one is to identify accountability. So whether it's a therapist, a spouse, partner, close friend, parent, someone that you can say, hey, I kind of need some help right now with just being accountable to myself, to life, to my responsibilities right now. Can I rely on you, two or three people, to help check in on me or send me a morning text, scripture, affirmation, whatever it is that starts your day? So just building community and breaking this the stigma of asking for help. I think a lot of times Black people, Black women especially, struggle with asking for help because we haven't been socialized, given permission, all of those things to do so. So recognizing how we're feeling and then activating that ability to just ask for help, give yourself permission to be vulnerable. The other thing is to also scale back your daily goals. So if on a normal day when you're feeling better, you would normally do 10 things, you might need to focus on 3 in
Mm-hmm.
this season and just do those. Another idea would be to make sure that you have some sort of routine. So I don't care if you have to use your calendar to schedule hygiene, breakfast, show up for these work meetings, go for a walk, you know, hygiene again or eat and go back to bed. Because I think that we take for granted the loss of structure that we're experiencing right now. And a lot of us thrive on structure, whether we realize it or not. And so being intentional about having a set routine is really helpful.
Absolutely. Someone said in the chat that having a circle of sisters to support you and hold you accountable is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely agree. My sisters have definitely stood in the gap for me in different circumstances and helped to hold me accountable. And hopefully, we can do that for one another, even in the group. I
Right.
think somebody else asked a question about sharing the video. So
Mm-hmm.
because this is a topic, like you just said, that sometimes Black women, we don't want to, we are not comfortable being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to create a safe space with only people in the group so that we would feel comfortable to express ourselves, to ask questions, to make comments. So if you have somebody that you want to share the video with, invite them to the group. And if they are, a fit for the group, then they'll be able to see the replay. But we're not broadcasting it. I'm not broadcasting it on my personal page or all over Facebook. This is a space where we can talk and get what we need.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen.
We have to protect our energy and each
Absolutely.
other.
Absolutely. Yeah. Be our sister's keeper, right?
Right.
Yeah. So another thing, in addition to the election that has been causing a lot of stress, is just the the racism, the outright racism that we see through police brutality,
Mm-hmm.
and we see through comments, microaggressions, macroaggressions,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's not just from the politicians who might be saying them or the police who might be doing the acts, but it's also from all of these people who are agreeing with them or not denouncing them.
Right.
So I find myself in this state of disbelief almost that there are so many people who are okay with racism,
Mm-hmm.
or it's just not a high enough priority, or maybe they're just blatantly racist.
Mm-hmm.
So would love to hear your thoughts on how we kind of deal with that. That seems like a daily thing that we encounter as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar. I mean, even this morning in my autopilot, seeing the first headline on my phone about, the events in Philadelphia overnight. And so this is something that is not going anywhere. It's been present since forever. So I think again, being mindful of how we protect our energy, um, but also being proactive in how we engage in community.
Mhm.
And I think it's hard when we see these things and we always see ourselves, our family members in these events, but then we have to show up professionally in white spaces. Or maybe we go to a church that isn't comprised of people that all look like us. And we're often caught off guard sometimes, numb other times, when, as you said, people don't see it for what it is or condemn it outright or support us, you know,
Mhm.
as their fellow humans, for lack of a better way to just outright say it. So I just think that being mindful about intentionality with community and again how we're spending our energy and what our intake is, because I think that it's not healthy for us to constantly see these videos or to have to watch every single thing or share everything on our social media because it's just enabling and reenacting the trauma.
Yeah. The yeah, it does. It feels very, very traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think there's this balance between, because someone else is commenting about being disengaged and sort of resetting their expectations towards disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this balance between kind of disengaging enough to protect your energy,
Mm-hmm.
but also not sort of, I guess, giving away all of your power, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because you still do want to put your energy and your power towards things that are good and things that are uplifting. You might
Right.
want to be active, socially active against racism or
Mm-hmm.
social injustice. So there's just this balancing act, right? Of jumping in and jumping out,
Yeah.
sort of like double dutch. You
Mm-hmm.
jump in, you jump a couple rounds, and then you jump out.
Right.
And one of the things I think that helps in terms of being in a community is that that when you jumped out, somebody else has jumped in. So you don't
Right.
feel like you have to constantly be in there jumping.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a turn, somebody else can have a turn, and then you can rest.
That is so important because I think that, for us, we know this has been going on, but it's so important to reframe that this is not our crisis. it's time for white America to finally show up and do their part and to heal for themselves as a community also, because racism is not healthy, and to be accountable, to showing up and making their corrections, for lack of a better word, into addressing some of these issues with structural and institutional racism also. And
Mm-hmm.
so, this isn't for us to constantly respond to. And statistically, we can't.
Right.
There are only 4% of all psychologists are Black.
Right.
We cannot do this in our field. I'm sure medicine is similar. Um, so we have to pace ourselves. This is not going to be done overnight.
Yeah. Um, there was also another two questions. One question was about anger and just constantly being angry.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, you know, it's okay to be angry. These things are
Mm-hmm.
infuriating. So
Mm-hmm.
that I think that's the first thing, because I think sometimes we think that we're not supposed to get angry, or if we're, you know, no, when there's injustice, we have a right to be angry. So, but I think that we don't want to stay angry. Sometimes anger is a great motivation, even to kind of push you into action.
Yeah.
So when I get angry, I like to, be angry and then think about, what is that anger trying to tell me? What
Mm-hmm.
what what is it trying to tell me? And then just kind of move.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I have to even physically move, like
Mm-hmm.
literally, because that moves the energy.
Yep.
So if I dance or move my arms or just do jumping jacks or something physical with my body, it moves that energy and that anger and allows it to kind of flow through.
Absolutely. I think we often misconstrue that anger is negative or bad, or a sin, even. Um, but anger is actually very healthy. Anger lets us know when something is wrong, when the boundary has been crossed, when there's some sort of violation. And so it's how we channel that. It's like you say, what our output is when that happens. And so it's identifying um, a healthy outlet. It's identifying, maybe setting boundaries. It's knowing when to take a time out and when to rechannel that energy to get back to a place of calm, or feeling more centered and grounded.
Absolutely. And you are an expert on Black stress and also trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a question asking, is there a name for what we're experiencing? Like,
Ooh,
it's called PTSD, or what is the name for that?
I think there are several names. And I think there's a cycle. I think even in a therapy session today, someone called it coronavirus emotional cycle or something like that, because there are times of grief, there are times of trauma, there are times of anxiety. I think that any of the symptoms can show up at any given time. And then because it's such a prolonged experience, our minds and our bodies aren't built to sustain the same level of stress for so long. And so naturally, something will kick in to help us protect and go into a different mode to sort of sustain and to not become overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
it's
then,
everything. I don't
right.
want to reduce it to one word.
And then specifically the racial trauma. What do they call it in psychological terms? Is it called racial trauma?
You're asking a Black psychologist, so yes. But in the DSM, it's not, clinically, there's no clinical language for it.
Wow.
And so that's why a lot of psychologists of color right now are working on decolonizing psychology, decolonizing, medicine, to address, the limitations of how people of color are not considered in Western medicine, in clinical diagnoses, and how we conceptualize trauma, depression, and any other diagnosis.
So what would you say, we're kind of talking, it's kind of like a continuum or a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things that we're all experiencing and we're all having emotional reactions to, um, we're feeling anger, we're feeling fear, we're feeling those things. And then, and as we're reacting to this, we should all kind of reach out and have an account, somebody that we can be accountable for, have that community, have that group of sisters.
Mhm.
When do you think it's at a point where somebody should definitely seek to see a psychologist or psychiatrist because it's just beyond maybe what the accountability person and the family can
Mhm.
do to support?
Sure. So I think that when things become so overwhelming, you feel like you can't break the cycles. You feel like you're depending on a person or people too much.
Yeah.
Things are starting to interfere with actually going to work or your normal routine outside of what's expected for the pandemic right now. So resetting expectations is one thing, but then when it inhibits functioning, that's another thing. So if you're taking off excessive time from work, if you're drinking excessively, um, anything that's just above and beyond what an average stress response might be. And then it could be preventative. I mean, I started seeing a therapist a couple of months ago just for my own accountability and self care because this is an overwhelming time.
And I was going to say that too. I saw an interview with Chris Rock and um, Trevor Noah. And Chris Rock was saying that he spends 7 hours a week in therapy.
Oh,
He
wow.
has two psychiatrists that he sees once a week. He
Hmm.
has a group that he goes to, and then he
Okay.
has a learning something to do with learning that
Hmm.
he does. And Trevor was asking him, he was like, "Well, don't you think that's excessive? Why do you need 7 hours a week?" And he said, "Well, I noticed that there were some patterns in my life that I kept repeating that I want to get a handle on. I have the resources." And he said, "If I was working on my body, nobody would blink an eye if I spent 7 hours a week working on my body." He said, "Can you imagine The Rock? The Rock probably spends 7 hours just on leg day, on one leg." So
That's
I
funny.
mean, if you think about it that way,
Hmm.
so somebody might have, more than one therapist or psychiatrist or a coach or something um, that they see. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So prevention and also just kind of like, you know, getting through it with the least amount of damage. We're all going to come out with some damage, right? But minimizing it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I typically don't advise seeing more than one therapist. I do advise, I could see therapists, psychiatrists, because they prescribe, and then maybe a group that helps to supplement. But just throwing that out there for general educational purposes, I typically don't advise more than one therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're seeing individual and couples, like if the dynamic is different, but just to have several individual therapists, that gets messy.
Right. It could get confusing, right?
Mm-hmm. Too many hands in the pot.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. But I know I definitely have coaching clients who also see a therapist, and we
Okay.
kind of work two different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And one of the other things, as we kind of talk about just maintenance and just getting through, I know I signed up for this program called Made For, and it's kind of a habit forming program. Sometimes having the community and the accountability and the goal setting just kind of helps to maintain those habits. And this month, we just got our new challenge, and our new challenge is on gratitude,
Mm.
which is something that I definitely am a huge proponent of. But it was really nice because they put the scientific studies in there that it shows how demonstrating gratitude and just shifting your thoughts from negative thoughts to grateful thoughts actually has a positive effect on your hormones,
Mm.
your DHEA hormones, which control your cortisol.
Mm.
And they've scientifically shown that it decreases that. So not only does it have a positive effect on your mental health, it has a positive effect on your physical health. So heart disease and all of those other things that are affected by those hormones.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I thought, really timely for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what the challenge is about is kind of writing in a gratitude journal every day, and then also doing some other things even above and beyond that that have to do with gratitude. But that is definitely a tip that I would give to everybody. I know that when I do a gratitude journal and when my clients do gratitude journals, that it makes a huge difference in shifting that energy.
Absolutely. It forces you to shift your mindset too, because I think it's important to pay attention to how much time we spend overthinking, worrying, stressed, angry, versus how much time we spend being grateful and positive and hopeful.
Absolutely. And we have some other suggestions for self-care, chiropractic care, regular massages, and facials. Definitely good stress relievers. Before the pandemic, I was getting acupuncture and massage
Mm-hmm.
once a month, each of those once a month. And then, the pandemic hit and I wasn't going. And I realized like 7 months into it, I was like, you know what? I no wonder I feel the way that I feel. I have all these knots and all this stress. I mean, what part of my self-care routine has just been completely eliminated.
Right.
So I went back and got a massage. I'm still not regularly doing the acupuncture and the massage, but that'll probably be something that I look into
Mm-hmm.
because I'm going to need something for these months between November and January
Mm-hmm.
once we have the election and before inauguration.
Right. That's important to put, those things in place, because I think for a while we did lose, many of us anyway, lost our normal go-to coping strategies because things closed.
Hmm.
And so figuring out, um, and you could say this better than me, but figuring out what reasonable, safe risk looks like is going to vary for everybody. But it's still important to address your mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And somebody else said meditation and yoga.
Mhm. Those are powerful
Definitely.
too.
Definitely. And the one thing that I like about meditation is that you can actually, since we can't physically travel, in
Hmm.
meditation, you can metaphysically travel and just completely get away. You
Yes.
can take a vacation when you're meditating, and just let it all go and not have
Hmm.
any of that on your mind. So I think meditation is crucial right now. I know
It
it is for
is.
me.
One of the apps that I like to recommend, because there's the Calm app and there's the 10% Happier and
Mhm.
Headspace, but there's one called Liberate, and it's specifically for people of color. And so I always recommend that one to my clients.
Okay. I think I saw that one, but I haven't tried it. But you
Hmm.
like it? You've tried it and you
Hmm.
like it?
Yeah, I do. And then there's one also that a colleague did. It's called Black Lives Matter meditation. If you Google that or Google Candace Hargans, you should be able to find it on her website too. But
Okay.
both are just affirming to Black people right now.
I'm gonna put it in the chat. So Black Lives Matter
Hmm.
meditation. And what did
Uh,
you say her name was?
Candace Hargans.
Hargon.
S.
Okay. 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 So we have a suggestion. Somebody said maybe we can share a daily meditation in the group. That
That'd be
would
great.
be lovely.
Hmm.
Jojo, would you like to start us off? And that would be lovely. I think that that would be great, and that's a way that we can take our community and support each other and empower each other. So I love that idea.
Absolutely.
Okay, she said phenomenal, so I think that means yes. That she's going to take that on. Um, so I know another thing that we said. another thing that I suggested that is kind of a having a plan. Like we know we have to have a plan to go vote because there's voter suppression.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a plan for that. But I feel like we need to have a plan for our mental health as well,
Mm-hmm.
surrounding all of the turmoil and upheaval with the election and racial issues. So I know you have a plan that you suggest to your clients. So I
Mm-hmm.
would love to hear that.
Sure.
And then I'll share my suggestion.
Sure. So when I typically talk about self care, I encourage people to break it up very intentionally into different domains. And so what that means is literally writing down spiritual, physical, and then mental or emotional, and identifying three or four things under each domain that you feel makes sense for your self care recipe, for lack of a better word. So, what are the ingredients that make you your best self? So, spiritual, does that mean making sure that you attend a Sunday service or a Bible study? Does that mean that you are intentionally praying or writing letters to God? Does that mean that you are spending time in your own intentional worship? Does that mean you're going on nature walks and spending time outside or recognizing things that are bigger than yourself? Physical, are you taking care of your body? Are you staying hydrated? Are you sleeping enough? Are you working out, exercising? What are things that keep your body centered and feeling its best self, especially now as we're spending so much time inside. The weather's changing here on the East Coast. We're spending time on virtual settings, so that takes a toll over time. So just being in tune with that, and then emotional, physical, or emotional, mental, uh, accountability, journaling, monitoring our intake, what we're reading, what we're watching. Maybe it's seeing the therapist, maybe it's having an accountability social group, even. Are we seeing friends? Are we seeing family? What does our community look like? So, those are just examples of how you can be intentional and that make sure that you're addressing each domain. Because I think it's so easy to get focused on, okay, well, I walk every day, so that's my mental health self care. But that's just one thing. And what if that doesn't work that day? You have to have more than one thing that works.
Love that. Love that. So you have just like you said, some of the things that were our go-to things we couldn't do anymore because of the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. So if
Mm-hmm.
you have all of the areas covered and you have more than one thing in each area, you can
Mm-hmm.
pull from something else. So I love
Exactly. And then there are also small things that we are doing right now. So a lot of people are maybe in every meeting, you don't turn on your camera if you don't have to. That's an act of self care. Maybe it's sleeping an extra half hour because you don't have to commute anymore.
yeah.
Maybe it's choosing to dress down some days or to advocate for a cause intentionally.
Yes.
Self care and
Care
process.
process.
So it's doing small things throughout the day to make sure that you are keeping in touch. And then just because we're working from home, we still have to take breaks. I
Mhm.
know a lot of people now are just working straight through from 8
Mm,
to 6 or 7 every day. And that's not okay either, just because you're at home.
absolutely. And my necklace you probably can't see, but it says vote.
Oh, yeah.
I'm advocating for my cause.
Yes.
um,
Michelle Obama wore that.
Yes, yes. So, and actually, this was a gift. In this, I subscribed to a box through one of the organizations I'm a part of, and it was their 1 year anniversary of putting together these boxes, and they decided to send all their subscribers a gift. And when I opened this, it was like I was a little kid on Christmas because I wanted one of those Michelle Obama necklaces, and I never got around to getting it. So I was so excited. So that
Nice.
same excitement and joy of sort of opening that box
Mm-hmm.
from that you get once a month is something that I would like to suggest for us as a self-care package for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get that box in the mail that somebody has personally curated for you and you open it up and you feel the nice things, it just brings such joy and warmth. And so, what if we create our own self care box or package? and we put in there the things that we know will bring us a lot of joy. A comfy pair of socks or a scarf or a throw, a beautiful journal if we're going to do our gratitude journaling. Also, maybe an appointment card with some scheduled girl time, whether it's safely in person or virtual. Um, a good book or a good podcast that you want to listen to, some of your favorite teas. I love tea, and the warmth of the tea, especially as we go into winter, is just very soothing.
Mhm.
You can even buy yourself a gift card to some place that you really love. And then that's kind of like that delayed gratification. So you get to open up the gift card and then you get to anticipate when you're going to use it and buy something for yourself and any other treat. And just actually put it in a box and wrap it up really nice. And then just open it for yourself the day after the election. And so you have something to celebrate. And also, I'm going to take a break from media after the election,
Yes.
a purposeful break, and just have that be some self-care time.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that time off is important too. Because again, we often think about time off for travel or for intentional use, but time off can literally be a day to sit still and be quiet, go for a
Absolutely.
walk, stay inside, don't get dressed.
Hmm. Pajamas, a nice comfy pair of pajamas might be good in there.
Yes.
Yes. Somebody else said chocolates. Chocolates
Mm,
are always good.
yes.
And we did have a question. Somebody wanted you to repeat the domains.
Spiritual, emotional, and physical.
Okay. Spiritual, emotional, physical.
Hmm.
Well, ladies, like I said in the beginning, I don't want to hold Dr. Jess long or hold you long either. So we're going to take a few, if anybody else has any questions, we're going to take a few questions and then wrap up for the evening. I'm going to scroll through here, see if I missed anything. Ooh, a cute sweater. That would be fun in there. Oh, there was one comment about EFT. Um, and EFT, I'm not sure what the letters stand for, but the another name for it is tapping. And you sort of tap
Oh, yeah.
yourself as you speak to yourself and you sort of speak through your emotions. You might say, I'm really stressed right now because of what happened. And then you would tap somewhere else. And then you say, but I know that I will feel better in a little while because this is going to, and then you kind of just talk through it as you're tapping,
Hmm.
and it is very effective. I found it to be effective personally. I saw a patient who had anxiety, and she came into urgent care, and she missed an appointment with her psychiatrist, and she had been on every medicine.
Hmm.
Her behavioral health records were hidden, so I couldn't see what medicine she had been on,
Sure.
and I didn't feel comfortable giving her any medicine because she was on and off, and I didn't know what worked, what didn't work. I didn't want to make the situation worse. And so I suggested a lot of things, but the only thing she hadn't heard of was EFT. So I was like, okay, go to YouTube and look at a video of EFT. She wasn't in a situation where she was going to hurt herself or anything like that. But I suggested it because I thought it would be really helpful for her because I've seen it be helpful for other people.
That's great. Um, that's not an area that I am proficient in, but generally, when we think about EFT, it's emotional focus therapy. And it's a modality that often works well with couples too,
Okay.
because it's focused on the emotional aspect of intimacy, engagement, communication. So interesting.
Yeah.
But I am familiar with tapping. I just haven't used it in my own work. So that's neat.
Well, Janet says that there's an app. Of course, there's always an app for that.
Right.
Um, she said it's called the Tapping Solution app. So
Ah,
we might be
an
able to check.
emotional freedom technique. Okay, that's a new acronym too.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Emotional freedom technique. See, we all learn from each other.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I think I went through. all of the questions and all of the suggestions. Um, this has just been really wonderful just to come together um, energetically, even though it's not in a physical space. I definitely can feel the energy of the group in the comments and conversing with you and actually being able to speak real time versus the lag of responding to a Facebook post. So I am so thankful that that you all took out the time to participate and be here, and that you gave so generously of your time to be here as well. And with that, I would just say, if you haven't voted, make sure you go vote. Um, thank you. Also, anything, if you have things that you want to post in the group, feel free. Anybody can post in the group. Um, and if there's anything, any suggestions that you have, like another Facebook Live topic that you want to suggest, or other things that you would like for the group to facilitate, feel free to send me those suggestions. And if you want to hear more from Dr. Jess, she does have a podcast, and I will put the link to her
Blog.
podcast that we did. That it was on generational
Oh,
trauma.
right. Yes.
Yep, that we did together. She's got multiple podcasts. She's got a SOAR podcast, and I'll put the link to her SOAR podcast in the chat, and you can take a listen to that. But thank you so much, and good night, ladies.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it.